this moment, face into the wind. Northern places we may meet again.
We thought that Foundation and Students on Ice were perfectly aligned in their objectives and intentions. And since the polar regions were part of our areas of focus, it seemed like a logical step forward to get into some educational programs. It seemed the obvious choice for us and the obvious result of our thinking to encourage more young people to discover both the polar regions.
That's His Serene Highness Prince Albert II of Monaco, a long-time explorer and advocate for oceans, environment, the polar regions, and a great friend and advisor and champion for Students on Ice. It may come as a surprise that the head of state of Monaco, a principality on the shores of the Mediterranean, has strong ties to the Arctic and Antarctic, but he does. Driven by a deep concern for the health of the planet, Prince Albert was the first and still only head of state to visit both the North and South Poles. He went to the North Pole in 2006, helping lead an expedition by dog sled over pack ice from northern Russia to raise awareness about climate change. In 2009, he journeyed to Antarctica for the first time, visiting scientific research stations and emphasizing the importance of international cooperation in polar research. Through his foundation, Prince Albert supports countless initiatives and organizations around the world aimed at protecting and progressing planetary health, including the Students on Ice Foundation. His efforts have made him a leading voice on climate, ocean, biodiversity, conservation, and environmental diplomacy on the global stage. He also competed in 5 consecutive Winter Olympics in the 2 and the 4-man bobsled, and has been a member of the International Olympic Committee for the past 40 years. I'm really excited to be joined now by His Serene Highness Prince Albert II of Monaco. Prince Albert, welcome to the Greatest Classroom on Earth podcast, helping celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Students on Ice Foundation.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Jeff.
It's great to see you. Great to have you with us. Before we get to your relationship with Students on Ice, which has now been over 20 years, you are the first head of state to have visited both the North and South Poles. What is it that drew you to those two parts of our planet, and how did it impact you?
Jeff, first of all, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share this anniversary year with you and what Students on Ice has been doing and meant so much to so many people around the world, so many young people. Listen, very simply, my trip to the North Pole, my 2 trips to the Arctic region in those years, 2005 and 2006. First, there was a maritime small expedition around Spitsbergen in the summer of 2005. And I promised to do that, to kind of retrace the same route that my great-great-grandfather, Prince Albert I, had done in almost 100 years before. And so we were able to see already then what the impacts of a changing world and of climate change were doing on the Arctic region. And we saw there's a great photograph that Prince Albert I had taken of a glacier in Spitsbergen, the Lindy Hook Glacier. And so his picture dated from 1906. And I took the same picture from the same spot. And we had an expert look at it and say that for his perspective, it had receded some over 6 kilometers. So that was already a living proof of that things were changing. And so that was the first approach. But then we had decided several years before then to try to do something. I'd done different trips with friends to the north of Europe and to Sweden, Norway, and Finland, and doing these little mini expeditions, if you want, on dog sled. And so it was that then the idea came around to, well, why don't we try to do the North Pole? And so I thought it was also a great tribute to my great-great-grandfather, the first, who had dreamt of going to the North Pole, but never quite did that. I said, why not? So we put this expedition together, and we left from our home base up in the Arctic. It was in Spitsbergen, but we had everybody go to Arctic Station Borneo on the 90th degree. And so we started from there, and for 4 days and 3 nights, we plugged our way across the ice cap to reach the North Pole. And so this was in April of 2006. And so that was really also an eye opener. And so even though I had thought of creating my own foundation, and I'll get to that later, before then, because everybody thinks it's because of that trip, that only accelerated things. But it was to notice firsthand what was happening in the Arctic, what was happening to the ice pack. We saw large areas of open water. We saw very little wildlife. We saw one polar bear, but that was coming back to Borneo after the North Pole. And everybody said, but so what kind of temperatures did you have? And no, it was, when we started out, it was pretty windy that day. So it was minus 17 Celsius. And then it got a little bit warmer and got to minus 11 or minus 12, which for that time of year in the Arctic is pretty warm. But all in all, it was just an incredible experience.
I remember reading after one of those expeditions, you said, we cannot forget that our planet is in grave danger and that we need more than ever to take action to safeguard it. So I can see how those experiences did influence you and maybe even led you to Students on Ice in a roundabout way. You've been the honorary chair of the Students on Ice Foundation for 20 plus years, which is crazy to think how fast time flies. But the mission of your foundation and the Students on Ice Foundation are very closely aligned. What is the memory that you have of why you became involved in Students on Ice?
As you said, we thought that the foundation and Students on Ice were perfectly aligned in their objectives and intentions. And since the polar regions were part of our areas of focus, we thought were important pretty early on for the overall balance of our planet. It seemed like a logical step forward to why don't we get into some educational programs? It seemed the obvious choice for us and the obvious result of our thinking to encourage more young people to discover both polar regions.
And now more than ever, isn't it important to provide those experiences? And particularly, I think, using those cornerstones of our global ecosystem as the platforms, which is what the polar regions are. As you know, we've been bringing youth together, global youth, and you have supported youth from Monaco to join Students on Ice for the past 2 decades. In fact, we just interviewed one of them for this podcast, Justin Sargenti, who's now doing his PhD in architecture focused on the Antarctic, which is quite exciting. What do you think the future of Students on Ice should be? Like, because we're here, I'm going to jump right to the point. 25 years, it's been a huge success. Facing the challenges we now face, do we need to keep doing something like Students on Ice? Is it something that needs to evolve and change?
First of all, I think Students on Ice have a great philosophy and a great program. And look at, you have more access to more students that have done the program in different countries. And thank you for keeping in touch with those in Monaco. Having spoken to almost all of them, this was a life-changing experience for them. Even if they don't go into environmental sciences or anything to do with the Arctic or with sustainability or environment, they keep that in the back of their minds and in their heart. And that will inevitably help them in their future jobs or in whatever their career takes them to. And so I think it's still vitally important to keep this going and to continue educating new generations of young people. And that's what we're also doing with the foundation. But to go back to Students on Ice, I think the relevance of Students on Ice is still very much there and has to be. And until we manage to convince people that we got to do the right thing to protect these beautiful, fragile areas, then something will be missing and we will have problems down the road. I think it's absolutely vitally important to keep going.
That's what I was hoping to hear. And as part of our 25th anniversary, we're coming out with a book, and you'll certainly be getting a copy, and it's called Hearts Wide Open. And it just really speaks to the stories of impact and all the alumni from 57 countries that have participated over these 25 years. But it just shows the importance of touching youth in the heart at that beginning of their life journey and how that influences them. That'll be coming out soon, so look out. It'll be in the mail to you. You're in a very unique position as both a head of state and as an environmental advocate. And I've witnessed this since we've known each other. And you really are one of the planet's great conveners to bring people together, to really push the political but also public agenda on these environmental issues. And early on, your foundation promoted the idea of a new relationship with nature and the various species which we share our Earth with. Reconciling humanity and the planet is how you put it. And what does that look like to you?
It's a work in progress, I think, because we still need to convince a lot of people of that philosophy and that approach. I must say there are also encouraging signs, people wanting to do their bit and try to improve things. But it's also, I think, a way to encourage people to be more proactive in different organizations and in different NGOs, but not only that, in their own communities, and be more involved and more active. I think it was very important to engage the private sector into all of this and having them put their thinking caps on and be a part of the solution and bring solutions to the table and viable solution. That's what we try to do in different instances, but the last one being the Blue Economy and Finance Forum, which was a prelude to the UN Ocean Conference in Nice last June, and just seeing the commitments that were made and that are in the billions of dollars to programs that are already existing, I think is very encouraging. And it only shows that they just needed to be nudged a little bit to get into that space.
I completely agree with that approach. And in particular, I wanted to just ask you about the ocean, because I'm guessing because you grew up along the Mediterranean, that's where your passion for the ocean comes from, or a big part of it anyway. You've become a strong advocate for ocean conservation and protection. You and I are both involved with, I don't think we're elders yet. I'd like to think we're not, but the Ocean Elders is another example of what you're involved in. What do you see as the most urgent priorities for the global ocean?
I don't think you can signal out one. They all go hand in hand. It's to have people understand that if we don't have a healthy ocean, if we don't have viable ocean ecosystems, then our ocean will not be healthy and will not be able to feed us, won't be able to heal us, it won't be able to give us energy.
And the oxygen.
That we need.
Breathe.
Of course, I was going to get to that. And when people realize all that the ocean gives to us, can give to us if it is healthy, and the fact that every other breath we take comes from the ocean, that should be reason enough for people to want to do more and want to help. There are encouraging signs, of course. There's a lot of great things happening. Treaties finally coming to fruition, like the BBNJ treaty, which hopefully now will come into force now that there's a sufficient number of countries that have signed. And we hope that next January it will come into force. We unfortunately don't have, to this date, a treaty on plastics, the fight against plastic pollution, which is a huge worldwide problem. There again, not enough people realize this. They know that there's a problem, but if different governments don't want to commit, it's hard to have a general understanding of that. Fortunately, there's also now a decision on banning subsidies for illegal and unreported fishing. And that's great news. Let's do a complete ban also on bottom trawling, and especially trawling in marine protected areas. That is an absurdity, and that has to be dealt with very soon. It's a whole set of reasons and of guidelines that we have to follow to make sure that we're doing the right thing and that our oceans are more resilient and be healthy enough to be able to support us.
You're right. There isn't one solution or one priority, because it's 70% of our planet, isn't it? Like, we really live on planet water, or planet ocean, I suppose. And coming back to Students on Ice again, like, the importance of that youth voice, that youth leadership is more critical than ever. And another one of our podcasts focused on a young girl named Alicia Fredrickson, who started a carbon capture technology for shipping as an example of how they are going to be parts of these solutions we need in the years to come. Thanks for all that you're doing for the oceans and for everything that you're doing for these many environmental challenges. This is a challenging time, you might say. COP30 coming up next month. Let's hope that there are some really good agreements and outcomes there. But I know you're going to get the hook soon. I'm sure Olivier is lurking around there in the background. But
That's fine. He's quiet.
Is he behaving? Okay. Just as a last comment, and maybe you can add to anything you'd like, but what gives you cause for hope in the seat that you're sitting in today as the father of 2 young children?
I think very simply the hope is that there are members of the younger generation that are taking up the baton and that are getting engaged and getting involved and have great ideas. And we have to absolutely broaden that group and
those opportunities
and give them opportunities to be able to put their ideas into solutions and into sustainable ways forward. But that's absolutely what I think is paramount in what we do, is to engage other people and engage, more importantly, the next generation.
And never lose that belief that one person can make a difference like you are doing. And we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge Jane Goodall, a great person we lost last week.
Absolutely. And I was so happy that I ran into her in New York at the General Assembly. It wasn't on the UN grounds. We were doing it at different times, interview with the Wall Street Journal. And so I was able to, with Enric Sala, we were able to say hello to her and to give her a hug.
She was truly one of the greats, and that's awesome you got to see her so recently. And our friend Enrique, another great champion, particularly for the ocean. So there's so many great things going on out there. I want to thank you, mon ami, mon seigneur. Thanks so much for what you do. You're a great champion for Students on Ice, and we're very grateful and lucky to have you on our team. So thanks a lot for coming on the podcast, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much. Hope to see you soon, and long live Students on Ice.
Awesome. Take care. And thanks to the wonderful Sarah Harmer for our theme song, Lancaster Sound. If you enjoy this podcast, please give us a review and a rating where you listen, and share a link of this episode with friends and family. It's the best way to make sure these conversations reach as many people as possible. To learn more about Students on Ice, go to studentsonice.com or soifoundation.org, and give us a follow on social media. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Until next time, I'm Geoff Green.
Feel this moment, face into the wind. Northern voices tell us where we've been. Feel this moment, face into the wind.